What? Okay, how we doing? A, B, C, D, one, two, three. Hello.
It's 4:02 approximately, I think.
Right, I'll do it. So.
Microphones are live. Okay, thank you.
My hearing
Yes. So how we should do it?
So. I'll tell you there.
Me, myself, and us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. It's not quite 2 o'clock. Yeah. Yes. All right, here we go. All right, now that it's 2 o'clock, I would like to declare this city council work session open on November 12th, 2 p.m. We've got a couple of orders of business for today. First is we're going to get an update from Layla on the land division amendments. I think this will be an update from the most recent planning commission, so we'll see where we are with that. What, if anything, needs to be done today. Then we're going to shift into strategic planning on 2 topics, revenue diversification and emergency preparedness. And I'll cue that up a little bit when we get to that item. And then we'll do a quick check, see if counselors need anything else, and then we'll adjourn.
All right.
Okay, sound good?
Okay.
Great. Layla, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, so Planning Commission held a public hearing on the land division amendments on Monday at 4 o'clock. And they did not get as far as taking public testimony, so the hearing's been continued to, I think it's December 8th at 4 p.m. And they'll take public testimony at that meeting. The discussion there weren't any substantive changes really to any of the language, just more kind of detailed discussion and fine tuning about a couple of specific topics. So there was a lengthy discussion on wetlands. We don't actually have any wetlands in Manzanita, but there was some discussion about that. So that took some time, but it was good. It was all led to, I think, a real clear understanding of the kind of last modifications that need to be made. So we also, at the same time, I think on the same day, received the comments from the city attorney. So we'll be able to take what the planning commission gave staff, and again, they're not necessarily substantive, just more surgical fixes. And then we got a few minor comments from the city attorney. And so what goes to planning commission in December for the public comments, and then ideally recommendation to council would be the final version. So that's good. So I think we actually are still on track. If they do indeed recommend approval, depending on your comfort level at the workshop, I would still schedule it for the January hearing.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with that. I think they did do some more deep diving yesterday that I feel very squeaky. Pretty squeaky at this point, but take as much time as you need. So that's kind of my thinking now, is that we'll circle back and I'll put it on the agenda for the next workshop. Assuming it's been recommended, you decide at that time if you want it on the agenda in January or if you want it in February. It'd be great to keep it in January, because I just got off the phone with the code people. I had a meeting on the municipal code this morning. And so they're starting the table of contents work now, and then they'll get deep into it once we give them the final language for these ordinances, because they, as we know, intersect with so many things.
That's exciting.
It is exciting. And we'll have a draft in about 9 months after that. So like probably January time. So if we could stay to the schedule, that helps with the codification, because it's not going to be easy. And then I'll circle you and Jerry into that review. It sounds really cool. Like it's all online and you can do the review that way. So, but they want to have the zoning stuff done, but they can start at least with the TOC, and that's the first big task that we have. So sorry, all those things always bleed into each other. There's
No need to apologize. We all
no, it's also happening in the background.
Are there any questions from council about any of that?
Yeah, I do. So are we trying then to do the zoning revision and the subdivision ordinance all at the same time?
You will probably, so if everything goes the way it is scheduled now, they'd be happening kind of a month behind. So you would have your first reading of zoning. It'll be 25 dash something. It'll be a new ordinance in December.
Mhm.
And first reading of land division in January.
Okay, because I've talked to you before about wanting to sit down and just get it, you know, the big picture kind of thing about zoning and land division and what the
Yeah.
look and feel of the entire city is likely to be as a result of all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, so they'll be adopted separately, but we can talk
Right.
about that in time.
One impacts the other, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yes.
So I've lost the thread on this. So are you asking for, are we saying we're going to do an additional workshop where we're looking at those two?
No.
together? This,
It's a better
This request
understanding.
made of Layla that, you know, she and I have a meeting, so, because I want the big picture kind of thing before I.
well, I would assume whole council will want that, so that's not unique to you.
Well, okay, well, that's fair enough, but
Yeah,
that's,
so-
that's a request that I've made to her myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, well, let's follow up on that
Sure.
today and see if there's something else that we should do as a group in addition to the normal one-on-one things we do with you and all topics, so.
Great.
Because if it's, might be more efficient to just do all that at once with everybody rather than one person, but sometimes one of us wants to go deeper depending on the topic, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, but no, we've had this conversation for a long time. I've been threatening to
Philosophical.
commandeer her and drive around the city with me and tell me what are we doing here and what are we doing there and what.
Wouldn't recommend that as a general practice. Tell me.
Yeah.
Take it in ways that people learn, they'll learn differently.
Yeah, so it's how you learn.
Okay, all right, so that's that, and we'll see, so then planning commission's next meeting is when?
December 8th at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So there'll be a continuation of that public hearing. The conclusion. And then
Based on just attendees, did you get any kind of feel for whether there were many people from the public there to?
there were 0 people from the public, yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of, okay, we may not get much public comment on this one, we'll see.
And do we have go for online viewership and?
We didn't get a lot, but folks go back and watch work session.
Right.
Most
Yeah.
often aren't present there, so folks might be watching.
Okay, well, we hope so,
Or sorry, planning commission, yeah.
okay,
And we usually do, when we have a hearing that people care about, they show up.
yeah, that's why I was asking, I just wondered, because if they've been thinking it was gonna happen that day and
Yeah.
ended up not finishing. But it was a long session, as I understand, so people might have not waited either.
If you're curious how many people have looked, our sessions are put on YouTube. So if you go to the city website and click and go to the YouTube, it shows.
Oh, yeah.
people.
How many views?
Oh, wow, I didn't know
Okay, great. All right, well, we can move right into strategic planning then. So I'll just step back in time a little bit. So some months ago, when the council met, we were actually at the Pine Grove for that meeting. And we did our work on setting strategic priorities for the year ahead. A lot of discussion and work around the comp plan, a lot of discussion and work around water and capital planning. So there were the things that were built into the budget and built into our priorities that we've been working on and they've been getting done. There were 2 items in addition to that, though, where we felt as a group that we wanted to do some work on developing strategy or beginning to develop strategy for the city. So we agreed upon 2 areas. There's always more that you can be interested in, right? But we agreed on 2 areas to focus. One was on what we're calling revenue diversification. And Jerry agreed to take the point for some leadership on that topic for council. And the other was emergency preparedness. And Brad Hart has taken the point for that. So we're in a little different mode than we often are in a workshop. Often we've got something already fairly well baked and we're discussing it and going through it and making sure we all understand it. This is different in nature because we're kind of stepping back and saying, if we look at revenue diversification for the city and we're looking at emergency preparedness, what is the work that we need to do to develop a sound, good strategy for the next years to come? And there'll be different timelines for that, but it's definitely not the here and now. So this is not a discussion about, ooh, I need to add this for this year or that for that year. It's more of a longer thinking process that we're going to go through. And we don't really have a format for that we've used as a council in this kind of formats, in this kind of forum. So we're going to try today to see how Jerry and Brad can take us through this, and we'll have good discussions on both topics, I know, and get some questions raised. But we'll monitor time as well. So we'll see kind of how far we get on both those topics today, and then leave some time to discuss follow-up and next steps, if that's okay with everybody. Brad or Jerry, any of you have a preference for who wants to go first?
I told Brad he should go first because he actually prepared a handout.
Yeah.
A handout goes first then. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks, Brad.
You're welcome. The handout was really sort of, after having some discussions with the mayor, ongoing discussions I've had with Layla and Mike, our emergency manager, as well as Linda, because of her background, she's typically been liaison for this, and your years of service with the EDCMB. This was sort of my brain dump, so to speak, about sort of how I think we should approach this. But again, it's just my thoughts. As Catherine said, we aren't making any decisions today, but I decided to put some of this on paper just to talk about the context of it, sort of the background, what we need to do. And I won't say a lot, but there's several questions in here that I think are important that I don't necessarily know the answer to and don't expect answers to those questions today. But I think the questions will help us all start thinking about looking forward, and what the answers to those questions are is what we're going to use to start formalizing a strategic plan for emergency preparedness.
Great. Could you send an electronic copy of
I
this?
sent that to you.
Oh,
Yes. So as everybody knows, we're working on the strategic plans and our priorities. One of the critical elements we're looking at is emergency preparedness. We need to make sure, because in the Cascadia subduction zone, we are prone to potential earthquake or tsunami, and we want to make sure that our community can respond and recover from such a major disaster. The goals I have today are to talk a little bit about the current situation in the city and the preparedness. And I may be missing some things, so please jump in at any point, you as well. But I sort of wanted to keep it high level just to give an overview. I want to frame some questions for the council, and eventually some of those questions will go to the public as well. We certainly need the public's input on this. And then as we gather input, we're going to use that to guide us in the emergency preparedness portion of the overall strategic plan. So when we talk about current state, the city currently allocates a certain amount in the budget every year for essential supplies. And can you remind me what that item is?
10 per year.
10,000 per year. And that's traditionally been used for essential supplies. I think the last major expenditure we had was the generator that we pulled out of.
Oh, we didn't end up using, no, we paid for the, we paid for the antenna.
So those items that we've purchased are typically things to support emergency preparedness. I know in the past we've looked at buying different things. So that's something that we need to keep in mind, is with that current budget, do we keep doing that? Do we look for other things? What do we invest that money in?
Just as a heads up too, sorry, Brad, not to slow your roll.
Could you?
Oh, sorry for that. No one ever says that. 4,000 of that is earmarked for EDCMB every out of the 10 currently. That can always change. I think this year I intentionally did 4. I'd have to double check. Anyway.
And the rest is the city's discretion.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's my intention this year, was to put 14. So the 4 that goes to EDC, and then the 10 is for city spending. It'd be great.
Yeah.
But you all can.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand. 10 in total and 4 of it goes to EBCMB, or 14 and 4 goes to.
Change things up this year. So, yeah, so I inherited like a commitment. I think it was up to 200,000 and it would be 10,000 per year. Added to this pot of money. What I was suggesting is that because we pay the 4,000 donation to EBCNB out of that pot of money, that I would propose that it be 14,000. So 4,000 comes out and then that 10,000 is reserved for the budget that the emergency manager, Mike, manages. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's what I did this year. And it's even more confusing because it accumulates. So we've done a good job. So for example, last year there was 18,000 roughly budgeted. We spent all but, is that right? Yeah. All but 3,000 or something. So when I did the budget this year, I assumed that we'd carry over that 3,000 and then I added another 14,000, and that's how, so that's what I do every year is it's a cumulative thing. It's a weird accounting side. Now that I have it figured out, I understand it. But so if, for example, like Mike doesn't spend any of the budget this year, whatever's left will be added to that.
It's in your reserve, just like we do in the other.
Yeah, it's not a reserve, but yes.
Yeah, so the idea is to create, which is still a relatively small pot of money.
Yeah.
Compared to what might be needed for emergency preparedness, but I don't think we need to get like that's completely dialed down. It's just,
No.
we contributed, it's practiced for a long time. It's not a large amount of money. Some of it goes to EBC, some of it's within the city's discretion, and Mike as the chief, what's the title? Is it safety?
He's the
Emergency management lead that's his budget to coordinate and recommend.
Yeah.
Well, and that strategy then allows you to buy bigger things.
Exactly.
You need a generator.
Well, and with the strategic plan too, we're working towards, you might be able to identify, well, in 2 years, we want to do X,
Right.
and that's going to be X dollars. And then that allows staff to have the conversation with the council to say, we're thinking this in our plan, it's going to result in this request.
Yeah.
And that's.
That would be clear: strategy first, funding second.
Well, so it's like.
Yes.
Some strategy.
You get a butt. That's that.
So logistically, the money just stays with the city. It
Yes.
doesn't just get donated to EBCMB every year.
4,000 does. They invoice us every year. We increased that this year because we required higher level of insurance. And so we're helping cover some of those costs, but so that goes for sure every year. Whatever it was 2, it's now 4. But the rest of it, it just depends.
NEBC doesn't like give us a tally of how they spent the 4,000. It's just
No.
a contribution to EBC.
Yeah, and we have that MOU, the memorandum of understanding with EBC, and that kind of sets out our roles, and that's part of our financial support is that relationship. So
Okay, I'd like us to move on if we can.
yes,
Great.
Some of the resources that we have in the Manzanita area, and these are held between EVCNB and the city. First of all, I'd like to note that a detailed inventory has been done. There's a project going on with the EVCNB to look at working towards getting more cache sites and more supplies. So the EVCNB asked for an inventory, which I know Public Works and Mike worked on. So we have details for that. And basically within the Manzanita area, we have, and these are approximate, but some of the highlights are we have 500 MREs, meals ready to eat. And then just generally, there's some things like cleanup kits, which are mops, brooms, dustpans, things of that nature. There's some cooking supplies. There's some rather large tents that can be used for shelters, canopies. There's water, both bottled water. There is water stored in reserve tanks at the water treatment plant. We have some water filtration systems, blankets, folding cots, medical responder kits. So those are for our MRC folks that know how to use those kits. The Medical Reserve Corps, we have some PPE, personal protective equipment, and some solar lighting. A lot of these are coordinated in conjunction with the EVCMB, which of course help to provide training to us, to the public, volunteers if needed when something happens, and logistical support. The city does have a ham radio infrastructure. So there's the emergency radio system that's in place at City Hall now that's used by the police force. And the ham radio system is what has always been said, when all else fails, there's always ham. So there is an infrastructure that is located at the old police station that enables communication with the county and the state emergency operations centers. This currently needs some repair, so it's currently not operable. And while I'll talk about some examples of short-term stuff, not necessarily strategic, that we might look. This ham system will require some maintenance testing, and we need to determine a clear ownership of that equipment, who owns it, who's going to maintain it, who's going to keep it up to snuff. And then we need to also talk about how the city can make sure that we have the capability of communicating with the EVCMB neighborhood radio network, because that's what our citizens are going to be using, the ones that have been trained and have those radios. So we need to have the capability for the city to communicate by that, or at least have a liaison in place to be able to talk with our citizens if we don't have the capability of communicating another way in the city. And we've done some of that with electrical outages and different things. We just need to, I think, refine that a bit more in our plan. So why does this all matter? If there is a major disaster because of our remote location and our population, it could be a matter, not days and weeks, but several weeks before official help arrives. So our level of preparedness is going to affect our overall ability for the community to be able to save lives, sustain city operations, and recover quickly. So within our strategic plan, we have the chance to define some things. And some of the questions I came up with is, what level of service does the city want to provide in emergency? What do we feel like we're responsible for? What do we feel like we need or have to do? What role should the city play versus what the community groups like EVCMB can handle? And how will we fund and sustain these efforts over time? And just to talk a little bit about EVCMB, their role in education and with the community is to make everyone feel responsible for their own level of preparedness. So if you live here, if you're a citizen, you need to be self-reliant, you need to be prepared, you need to be able to communicate, you need to have a go bag, supplies, food, things of that nature. But the city also needs to determine beyond that, what additional help would we offer or want to offer? And then we have to think about people that are visiting here that would not necessarily be as prepared as our local citizens. Any questions? Break in, any thoughts? Keep going.
There's also, it's not just full-time residents, but vacation homeowners also that EVCMB targets to try to work preparedness training to them as well.
Anybody that wants to get trained or learn more, EVCMB would support that for sure.
Well, because one of the things that's the concern is minimizing the number of people that are simply not prepared at all. And the vacation homeowners have permanent locations here in town where they really ought to be able to have go bags and things like that. Whereas the STRs, I know that's been a little bit of a struggle to get the STR owners to go bag up their homes. The strategies around that, but
At least we have some ordinances in place. The SDRs do have evacuation maps and information, right? So if somebody chooses to read or look at that, it's there available to them.
Nope.
Nice. So some of the key questions that I think council needs to mull around. Again, I'm not expecting answers today, but as you read through these notes and think about it, maybe you can start sending me some of your thoughts or things that you think could be answers to this. Or we talk about it in a future work session to get some of those answers.
Would it be interesting to get kind of a read today from
Sure.
people, just about where you think we are right now?
Yeah, because that was my first question sort of to council was, how do you feel or how would you describe the city's current level of readiness? Do you feel like we're in really good shape? Do you feel like we're in okay shape, or do you feel we're not in shape to do anything at all?
Well, I think if we look at Manzanita as a city of 600 full-time residents, we're probably way above the curve in terms of culture of readiness. That's not to say we would nail the thing if it happened tomorrow, but there's no doubt that EBC and others have ingrained in the community a level of awareness that will serve us well in addition to the technical supplies and expertise that's been amassed. But the problem, of course, is that it could happen at any time, and if it happens on July 4th, we're talking about an entirely different city, what I just described. So, I guess I remember conversations on council, Linda, going back when it was just you and I, and there were 3 other members. I forget who they were.
So we were the motion to.
But I remember conversations about, well, should all the SCRs have X number of go bags, or should the go bags be centrally located in some, safer place? If you have all these visitors in town, when the big one happens, why would you think they're going to be sitting around the SDR? Maybe they're going to be out at the beach. Maybe they're going to be out at a restaurant. So there's a lot of questions about how to be prepared. And I guess the short answer to your question, Brad, is that I think we get an A+ for one version of Manzanita, and certainly not a D or an F on the big version of Manzanita, but we're way less prepared as any city would be. I think for how do you handle a situation where you've got more people in town at any given time that don't have a place to go to or familiarity with other residents. So I don't know. You guys have been working on that, I'm sure, for years, but I think that's what we got to figure out.
Because the reality of the situation is, if something happened in the off season, we may be talking about 600 people here, but July 4th, we could potentially be talking about thousands.
Yeah, and it's not just it's not just the scale of more people. It's the fact that you have people. I mean, I just got back from a trip. I mean, if something happened when I was on that trip, not only didn't I have a home base other than a rented room for a night, but I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have any kind of a support network in place. And so we multiply that by a lot at high times during the year. So I just think we have to keep working on that, and that to me would be a great place for us to make inroads into being able to use TLT money more effectively than just promote tourism. I mean, so you give us good grades, and then a cautionary set of grades for the version that may be in place the day it happens. Be nice if we had some sense of when it's going to happen, but we don't. So,
Anybody else?
Yeah, well, I kind of echo everything that Jerry just said. It's a conversation that happens in my house fairly regularly because Chris was real active with EBC for a period of time. The thing about what do we do if it does happen on the 4th of July? And how prepared can we be? It's always kind of a head scratcher to me, because people will panic, and we don't know how many to plan for. And if it's not the 4th of July, well, maybe it's Mother's Day, which brings a bunch of people into town too, but at a different rate. And so there's part of it with where do you spend your money and how much money do you spend? And so those are head scratchers to me. I don't know what the answer to that is, but the people will expect the city to be ready, is what my suspicion is. And the other thing that you really just don't want is people to get into a desperation phase. Because we've had the conversation in our cluster about well, look at all these vacation homes that are sitting vacant, and people will break in and start trying to find what they can to get through the day. And so there's that aspect of protecting the homeowners' assets too. So lots to consider in this. So I think generally, like Jerry said, very high marks for the people that are here, and what to expect for the people that aren't here regularly. There's a lot of unknowns in that.
Which is why it's on our priority list, because I think all this is doable and plannable. You just have to decide what you're going to commit to, which is part of the work. So I would agree with the especially comparison with a lot of other communities in Oregon. I think the steady work of EVC over a long period of time has had an effect, but I don't think our full-time residents are fully prepared. I know that for a fact. So I'd say maybe a third are like pretty well prepared, and the rest maybe not so much. If you keep going to EVC events, you get the feeling it's everybody, but those are the people who go to the events, and those don't reach everybody. And I know people who aren't. So I think at the same time, it can also seem like such a big thing, and minds go to worst case scenarios, thousands of people, 4th of July. But I think we just have to kind of just put that to the side and park it, and start with some simpler things, which are just a simple statement of if we have an emergency, a major emergency, how many people can we take care of and support, not take care of? How many people can we support today? And what does that look like? And then I'm probably being way oversimplified about this, but then you just say, what does it take to increase it? And what are the financial implications of doing that? It's financial, it's also space, it's also priorities against other projects. I mean, there's a lot to be considered, but I think it's all very doable as long as we want to really put our minds to it and then start to think seriously about what a bigger financial commitment would look like, and then sort against how we would achieve that. So it's more I think it's more the will of the council and the will of the community that decides how much further we want to grow this and what it should look like. I would say personally, I spend time on this. I think about it. It occurs to me in a different way than before I was in elected office, where I'm thinking, sometimes I'm just walking down the road and I go, what if it was right now? Where would I go? What would I do? What would the situation be if it happened today? And I don't feel like the city is as ready as I'd like it to be, or that I think it should be. And that's just a matter of priorities and how things have been done up until now. So it's not a criticism, it's just a fact. And when I went up and I saw what a few other communities have been doing, in particular Cannon Beach, with how they have made a decision to do more supplies for people and provide places for them to bring their supplies. They have a different model than we've had. So then the reason I really advocated for this to be a priority is I think it's time to take a fresh look at it and decide if we're going to commit differently than we have been up until now. Slow and steady investing, slow and steady communication with the public's been great. I think the majority of those conversations, and that's fine because it's useful, have been kind of between EBCNB and individuals preparing themselves. The city really hasn't been a big part of that conversation. And I would like to see us make some progress on that. So I have a bias right now. I'm gonna learn more like everybody else, but I have a bias right now towards increasing the capacity and starting to devote some time to communication with the community here and all of our communities to say and be clearer about what the city can do. And we expect individuals to do, and then the role of the EBC and B. So I think it's a really ripe area for us.
So I am thrilled. The city, as long as I've been around, has really not taken an active. There, 20 years ago, Jerry felt that the city needed to be more involved, so he put in the $10,000 a year, and that's where that all started. The city has never really,
City manager Jerry Tipp.
former city manager Jerry Tipp. The city has really, until actually Layla came, has really never taken any responsibility for emergency preparedness. They've said, well, EBC should do, which EBC thought they could. We can't. We don't have the legal authority. We don't have, it's not our job to do that. It's the city's job to make sure that the city is prepared and has been supportive of preparing citizens. So I think this is absolutely on the right track. I think this is a major step forward. It is really clear that we define roles. You know, what is the role of the city? What is the role of EBC and how can we support the role of the city? And what is the role of the citizens and how can they support their own preparedness? So I think just having this discussion is a huge step forward and beginning to formalize it under a legal authority that has the capacity to make the kinds of decisions that need to be made for emergency preparedness is a huge step in the right direction. And the fact that we have a staff member that's focused on emergency response and preparedness is huge. And so I think the more we can work with Layla to look at what our strategy should be as we move forward. We've got a good base. It's not perfect, but we've got the community. I don't think there's anybody in the community who wouldn't say, I've heard about emergency preparedness. I know what I should do. I may do it, I may not do it, but I think there's a culture here of at least discussion of preparedness. And what we need to do is, with the city's leadership, take that to the next level. And I think there are answers to all the questions you raised. It's baby steps. It's looking where we want to go and then beginning to take small steps to get there. I think we can deal with all of the issues surfaced today in time. It'll just take us time. The fact that the city and city council is willing to focus on emergency preparedness, I think is a huge step. And I personally really sincerely appreciate the effort. I think it's important.
Okay. Yes. Siri?
So shall I continue?
Yes, please.
But I think it's a little deeper into the details with some of the questions you had about figuring out what we can do, the number of people, those things. I think based on some of the experience that I've had, we have resources that can help us with that. Everline was one of the people that we had, that EBC and B had come and do a presentation on preparedness. And his company just recently did a project with Microsoft to put readiness in place at one of their campuses to be able to sustain 10 people, I think, for a week or two.
I think you mean 10,000?
Yes.
You said 10.
10,000.
Yeah.
Sorry, but yes. But there are
People I could do.
yeah, thank you. It's pretty modest. There are resources out there, and I think we can find people through EBCMB contacts that can help us project or things. I think we talked in that discussion we just had a little bit about the vulnerabilities, more of those situated around unknown and the number of people. As far as our vision, when we start looking out 2, 3, 5, 10 years in the future, we need to think about what level of investment feels appropriate. And I think based on our conversation so far, we're going to definitely need to look for funding or increase that budget, be it through potential TLT funds, grants. There's other sources of funds than the city budget that will help with things like this. And another question comes up is, and you talked about it a little bit, Linda, should we take a graduated approach to build capacity steadily over time, or should we accelerate certain priorities? And I think that will just start to become more apparent as we get more into the details. So as you mentioned, Catherine, strategy, more details, and then you start looking at it in place. But does anybody have any feelings about that graduated or accelerated? I think it depends. I think some things, which I'm going to talk about later, is some short-term initiatives. I think some of those are easily accomplishable quite quickly without a lot of money or staff resources available. So again, I just threw out a couple of those ideas I want to talk about to spark some ideas, but any initial thoughts on that?
I think it may be dependent on the topic itself. You know, like you said, there are some things that may lend itself to do quickly because it's fairly easy, or something like preparing for the tourists. I mean, there are ways that clearly ways we can do that, but it would be almost impossible to jump from where we are right now to where we need to be in order to deal with a capacity issue.
I'm more of a slow and steady wins the race. I know that's going to be shocking to anybody who knows me, but that's generally my preference. I mean, I think, and again, it'll depend on what we come up with. There may be some areas that as soon as we take a hard look at it, we might be more uncomfortable about and say, better get going on communications first, or we better start thinking about mass care first. My general bias would be to, as we said, have a longer term strategy for this and an investment plan to go with it. So I'm thinking like, you know, at least a 5 years worth of work to build up to whatever, assuming that we do more, significantly more than we do now. I'm thinking in that kind of a timeline. And that's my personal opinion. So if you guys feel differently.
Well, I guess
Well, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I forgot. Because I'm always balancing it against everything else.
Yeah.
If this was the only thing we were doing, we'd take a different approach. We've got some significant projects underway, and those have got to get completed too. We know we've got at least a good solid year of comp plan work and some of the other capital planning work that's happening. And so, I mean, but that's part of why the slow and steady for me, because it's always going to be balanced.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jerry.
Well, I'm not stuck in that, but I do think that, like, even in accepting your estimation that only 30% of our residents are prepared, actually, I would think that's a pretty good number. Honestly, the good news is that the other 70, not stupid people, ignorant people, people that are not able to exercise good judgment and discretion under pressure and stress. They just maybe have not drunk Kool-Aid with as much enthusiasm. But I do think that, again, going back to our 600, we are probably, thanks, well, obviously to EPC, we are, I think, probably ahead of the curve in general. But then we do have this other looming obligation, and it is an obligation because we are a tourist town, and we're proud of it, and we celebrate that, and we live off that, and we do things here that we wouldn't be doing if we weren't a tourist town. But since we are a tourist town, we just have to, I think, sort of, they're obviously related. The question, how do you prepare the 600 for the event? How do you prepare the 4,000 event. They're related, but I do think that for the city, as a government, most of our energy and most of our resources should go to the latter question, not to ignore the former. But I think the former is,
The former being the full-time
yeah.
residents.
I think the partnership should. I don't think EVC should have to. Well, let's put it this way. I think the bottom line is EVC at this point probably has a sense of who is going to, be supportive and engaged with you and who's not. And, I don't think you're going to flip those numbers significantly just by doing more, doing it better. You guys do what you do. And, I think the bottom line is you probably reach the saturation to some extent of how many folks, what percentage of the community are you going to get to really buy in a proactive way? And I think you've done a great job. But then we have this other group that it defies definition because it's different. Not only is it different from Mother's Day to 4th of July, but they're literally different people. They're different people coming from different places. They're just a unknown quantity. We can sit around and talk about between the 5 of us, we probably know all 600 people that live in this town. But we certainly don't know. We certainly don't know all the folks that pass through, and that's where I think the government has the greater ability with its resources and its reach and its ability to regulate to do stuff. I'm not sure what it is we can do, but I think we do have that authority, that ability. We're not going to just lecture the 70% that have not jumped in with 2 feet to get on board. I don't think that's our.
No,
But we do have things we can do, I think, with our resources and our authority to address the tourist issue. And I don't know whether, that's not, you guys haven't sort of separated out, EVC hasn't over the years separated out. What do we do about the tourists?
Oh, we talk a lot about that.
I know, well, okay.
And there are some potential plans
Yeah.
that could be discussed initially to get us started in terms of options, because that's a critical issue. I mean, we're very aware of that and how tourists that are here during an emergency, what happens. And Tom's point about breaking into houses is something we've spent a lot of time working on. And I do think there are some good options that are duplicative of what other communities have done. That have Cannon Beach is a good example. I mean, that's one of the issues that they've struggled with because they have the same tourism issue that we have. So I think there are answers. It's just.
But it's a different kind of approach. I mean,
Oh, yeah, it's totally different. Totally different.
Well, I too am a subscriber to the slow and steady wins the race kind of approach. On the other hand, I do think that as we do look at the inventory of what the city's assets are, that we're going to see that there may be some low-hanging fruit that we can remedy some situations pretty easily. And now I'm going to make myself a hero in my own neighborhood and talk about being able to build a shed for the neighborhood on a city right-of-way, for instance, as being something that shouldn't be that, in my mind, doesn't seem to be that hard to do, with a neighborhood that's already collected a lot of stuff. And when you do that kind of thing, you put a lot of assets in a location so that people that they haven't completely fully prepared can, as a community, come together still and say, look, we've gathered these things and we can amongst ourselves dole them out and get us through days, maybe a week, maybe more, without having to be so remarkably fully prepared. Chris and we sign into the Yellow Radio pretty religiously. And they have some exercises. And one of the exercises that they did in the not too distant past was canvass all of the people that called in on the Yellow Radio about how much water do you have in reserve. And it was interesting to see what the variation was, because the people that are on Yellow Radio, they're pretty much 2 feet in, right? Yet there were a lot of people that really, and some maybe really hadn't thought about it all that well yet. And other people could probably, grow gardens in the Sahara. Anyways, so you do find these varying levels, but if you allow the various clusters to go about their work, you're going to find that as a group, you're going to do a lot better. And then the work becomes, how do we deal with the tourists that haven't really prepared at all? And minimizing the number of people that the city really needs to address becomes a more doable thing.
Yeah, there's a couple things that have been pending, and it's been very frustrating for people to hear you're going to have to wait. That's not going to change today, because we still have the same situation of, we'll know what makes sense when we're stepping back and see what the whole plan is. We'll know what makes sense in terms of equity, what's allowed for some groups, what's allowed for others, groups that rent places, groups that have found other solutions that don't have garages. I mean, this is where it gets kind of sticky, and I don't actually prefer to spend much time there. I appreciate you wanting to be a hero to your neighborhood, so that's great, but what's going to wait? Because I think the responsible thing for us to do is to look at this whole plan and say, what are we going to do? And it might change up what's available for everybody, for the neighborhood. So yeah.
Discussion.
So what else should we get into?
I think we talked about this a little bit, but I just want to hit all the questions as some of the public expectations and funding. What level of service should the public expect from the city in a disaster? I think we discussed that a little bit. How do we balance this with other city priorities and limited resources and budget? We talked about that as well. How do we build public understanding and support for future funding of this? So the public needs to be involved in this and support what we're doing as far as funding, partnerships. Are we going to look for grants? So we need that buy-in from the public before we make final decisions. If we go beyond that, sort of some of the community and partnerships, how do we include resources like EVC and B expertise and community volunteers in planning and implementing? There are other organizations out there that could help as well. I think one of the bigger questions, and I think we've got some examples of what we've done that's been successful, but what's the best way to engage our residents? Community forums, surveys, online, which we've done with the comp plan and different things. And I think some of those have been effective. Maybe even doing a public forum specific to emergency preparedness. So just some things to think about. Any reactions to any of that? I think these are just sort of questions to start thinking about, but not necessarily answers at this point. Some examples of short-term initiatives, again, not in that bigger, higher strategy, but as we talk about gradual approach versus immediate approach. And these are really not comprehensive, but just some examples I saw. So our communications reliability, I go back to the ham infrastructure for the city. We could reactivate and test that ham radio system. I think we've got resources we can rely on from the EVC and B. As I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, there needs to be some adjustments to the antenna at the old police location to get that in place, but the equipment's there. So I think that's something we could do relatively quickly without a lot of staff commitment to it. I know there were some concerns about security. There's still some sensitive things.
In Old City Hall?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
So think there's potentially some solutions. We would have a very limited number of people with access to this communications equipment. But the South Bay is where EVCNB currently has some storage stuff.
Mhm.
There's a locked door into where the communications equipment is, so we could potentially lock the door outside of that conference room so nobody can get past that. Just an idea. So that may be something we can address or look at to get resolved relatively quickly. I think communications is pretty high on the priority to look at sooner than later. And then, of course, I know Mike is working on establishing and getting the Emergency Operations Center up and running here at City Hall. So again, establishing the Emergency Operations Center here, testing it, start talking about provisions, because if something happens, there's going to be a staff of people here that need to be supported with food, sleeping arrangements, water that we need to have on site here in case that emergency happens. And then, of course, longer term, and this goes more to the strategic side, is beyond the EOC, looking at expanding support at Underhill Plaza, because this is an assembly site. So if something happens and people evacuate from the inundation zones, they're going to be coming here. So looking at things like public shelter.
This is the long-term investment you're talking about now.
Yeah.
This is not a short-term.
Correct.
Okay, so you're kind of going into either
Transitioning to
category.
the
Okay.
longer term.
Okay.
But beyond the initial EOC is looking at that longer term for public shelter distribution. And then we've also got a project in process in conjunction with the EVCNB, starting to explore and look at cache sites like Cannon Beach has got in place. Cannon Beach has got 4 sites, I think, with the ability to support approximately 800 people for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So that's something that's on the radar, but like everything else, this is going to be a long-term gradual approach. We expect with EVCNB's help, they've communicated to us a year to talk about it, the planning, looking for money, getting the state involved, looking at those resources. Another element of this is resource development. So we have to think about maintaining city emergency supplies, coordinating with partners such as EVCNB, exploring grants, TLT funds, things outside of our current budget and funding to expand our capacity beyond our annual budget. I think there's some opportunities there. So for me, some of the next steps are we've done some today, but to continue collecting council feedback for some of these key questions. So as things come to mind, or you read through these talking points, if something else comes up, send that information my way. Longer term, or after we've talked more about the strategy, is engaging the public for input. Again, we need to determine those preferred methods of outreach and how to get the public involved. As we start establishing this strategy, we need to look at what our goals are and timelines. Again, looking beyond today, 3, 5, 10-year targets. And then basically, once we get through a few of those next steps, is start drafting the emergency preparedness part of the city's strategic plan to continue reviewing with council, eventually the public, and of course staff will be involved as well for further review, refinement, and adoption. And then if there's no more questions or input, I'll have a closing thought.
Well, the only additional input that I think in terms of short term is important, and that is we've talked about supplies for staff, because they're going to be central to the community's reaction, but training. So how, what is the optimum training in response? And there are very clear ways and clearly defined ways, and it would be great if staff were trained in that and had that capacity.
And as an example of that, like the incident command system training.
Right.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, there's ICS courses, which think EBC and B's tried to coordinate to get different city staffs on board to do that.
We've tried 3 times and they've been postponed
Yeah.
each time. So looking forward to when we get that one done.
Yeah.
It'll be great. Yeah. So maybe before you do your close, I want to couple of things. So my bias or my slant is toward, in terms of communication, is to figuring out how to use our existing ways of talking with people face to face, like the no coffee sessions or conversations with council. So I think we could, in relatively short order, pick a couple of times, and just say that's going to be the focus. We'd love to hear from you as we're working through this. So I think a town hall on it would be a good idea too, over time. And I think then that starts to make a shift, a visible shift, because it's the city having that conversation, not the emergency volunteer corps at the Pine Grove. It's the city. And now we're talking about the city's business, the city's resources, and the city's responsibility. So I think making that shift will help get people in a different mindset about it too. We've got a lot of surveying going on as it relates to the comp plan right now. And I think we could be surveying out people a little bit. So I'd rather, given that's going on, I'd rather focus on people first, and I think that'll be more effective. We could also engage the community and, the best ideas about outreach for people who aren't here during the week ever, they're only here on the weekend, or guests or visitors, and have them help us think about a different person other than themselves, like a visitor, a guest, and what we should be accountable for and how we do the work. I think there was one other thing and it's left me. But yeah, and I just want to repeat, I would rather face something hard, really square on, and be very clear about it. Like, worst case scenario is 7,000 people and people are here for a week. Go. What do we have to have ready? A, B, C, D. What's it going to cost? A, B, C, D. What do we have now? What do we lack? And then just start dealing with it. I'm usually ready to get to that stage faster than I'm not talking about council necessarily, but other people would need to spend more time talking about like that. I'm ready to say, what are the 3 basic scenarios? The worst case, the medium case, the small case. And let's just plan for those and see what it will take. And then we'll educate ourselves, we'll educate the community. We can make some decisions and just get to work on it. So I'm probably way underestimating the complicatedness of it, but I think it's something we can do.
I think it's a really, really good approach. Oh, and I think it could be very effective. And there's already some data around that. So I would personally really support that.
I remember my other thing. So I don't know, I want to check in with Layla on behalf of staff too, because I know there's other work going on. So do we have another next step from this too, which is just to make sure that the things that Brad mentioned today are on the list of to-dos, not necessarily like they're going to get done tomorrow, but they're on a list and they're being prioritized. So are you staff already aware of these things?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just a question of when they can get done and compare in balance with everything else that's in the hopper. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Anything else? We've just been chatting away and I didn't ask you for input.
I'm just listening.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, Brad's been really great about, and Linda, coordinating with staff. So no, this is a surprise, which means job well done.
Yeah.
So I didn't give you this in advance.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Well, I mean, and we've got budget cycle coming up and you're doing capital planning. So
Yeah.
no, it's good timing in terms of thinking 2, 3, 5 years out and just starting to make some guesstimates, if nothing else, about what we might need to look at. So
Yeah, and Mike's been working on his strategic plan and coordination with this, and so that's helping him frame up what we'll be doing this year, and then what we'll be going for next year too. So, okay.
Closing thought, preparedness is not just about supplies, it's about planning, partnerships, and priorities. This strategic planning process is our opportunity to decide together what kind of resilience we want to build for Manson.
Damn right.
Now, I noticed
If that quotation marks, is that something that you pirated from Linda?
Bits and pieces from everywhere, yeah.
All right,
Thank
good.
you. Thank you for your input. That was a good session. Appreciate it.
So Brad, as you take the feedback from today, you can come back, I work, everybody knows this, but I'll say it. So Layla and I work on the agenda setting and planning forward. So when you're ready, let's look at what you think is a good cadence for workshop time if needed, conversations with counselor, a larger forum for the community in here, and then we can, sometimes just putting it on the calendar is actually what makes work start to get done. So just let us know when you're ready for that. Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Spiegel,
Okay,
shift gears here.
sure. Revenue diversification. So I'm just going to go back briefly to how this all got started. So the council in the spring of 2022 agreed to freeze the cap on STRs for 3 years, during which we were going to consider both adjustments to the cap going forward, which we have done and we're in the process of doing, but also we were going to take a look at how we could diversify our revenue streams so that we weren't so reliant on STR PLT money. Now, some folks would say, well, you didn't do anything during those 3 years, and that's not exactly true. We certainly haven't followed through and instituted specifically any of the revenue streams that we've been looking at under this project. The good news is during those 3 years, we happened to make progress, obviously, with the water rate increase and with some SDC work and with some cost recovery work. So there was different things going on that improved the city's financial picture during that period of time, but we still have not gone forward with any of the proposals for new revenue that we looked at during those 3 years. We did look at it initially. Dave Dillon was the chair of the budget committee. He and I and Chip Greening worked together with Layla to sort of roughly brainstorm possible news sources. We then engaged Eco Northwest to do a study for us. They looked at more than the couple of sources we identified, but they did focus on those that we identified. And so they came back with a short list of 4 potential sources, and we've talked about them at different times in different forums. Just want to review them quickly. The first, actually, there are no particular order. I shouldn't put them in a priority, but I'll do that anyway. The first and easiest to implement, let's put it that way, would be the transportation utility fee, which would be essentially a surcharge on monthly water bill that would allow us to generate roughly $200,000 a year revenue for the road fund. The second one that's got attention, probably more attention, any of them have been, is the tax on prepared foods. And we actually did go forward with a series of conversations with counselors on that. Getting the timing of that right now, but I was involved, I think, in all of those. I think we did at least 3, maybe 4. We didn't get great crowds, but we got consistently supportive crowds. We did not hear a lot of pushback from residents on a prepared food tax. Now, Catherine and I did sit down with a couple of, I guess you and I sat down with
Doesn't matter who,
2.
just,
I
yeah.
think maybe Linda and I sat down with the others. Regardless, we touched base with 4 business owners that would be directly impacted, and we got a stunningly different response from 2 versus the other. But that just reminded us that we would have a lot of work to do with the business community to prepare them for the implementation of that kind of a tax if we go forward. The third option on the list was some form of paid parking. And honestly, the paid parking is not likely to be a big revenue generator. Although Eco Northwest did estimate that it might bring in as much as 100, I think 25,000, 145,000. But that depends on a lot of things. And I've always thought of paid parking as being at least as much about livability as revenue generation. So Layla's pointed out in the past that, before you'd even want to talk about any kind of paid parking, you'd want to do a parking study. In this town, you'd have to do a parking study in the center to make it worthwhile. And so I think one of the things we should at least be talking about at this stage is this upcoming summer the time. Now that we're getting through the comp plan process, not obviously fully, but deep into it, we've talked a lot about parking in relation to the middle housing work and the impact of tourism on parking in the community has been ongoing, constant conversation as long as I've lived here. So, maybe this summer is time to get the study done that doesn't have us talking significantly about what to do on paid parking to at least deep into the fall and winter. So, I'll just put that out there, and we can obviously that's realistic. And then the fourth option is a general operating bond, which I don't think we want to be even talking about without a really big ticket item that would make such a bond necessary. So the food and beverage tax, I believe, is going to be something that other communities around Oregon are going to pursue with the guidance of LOC. They've done a lot of work. I don't think they've done the polling yet, but they're going to do some polling. They're doing a lot of
And
work.
LOC is the League of Oregon Cities, people who might not be familiar with that.
And they're going to they've done a lot of work on preparing people for how you run a local campaign to support the passage of a prepared food tax. It doesn't have to be passed, at least not in this town, by vote of the people. It can be voted by the council. That would be a very large discussion, I think, for council to have. But I think that being among the three, not counting the general operating bond, among the transportation utility fee, the paid parking, and the prepared food tax, that last one is the most likely to be controversial and spicy, and I think we should proceed with caution. And as long as LOC is likely to help lead several other communities through that process in a couple of years to come, I think we can
Some action learned, you're saying?
I don't think we have to learn as much as we have to join in with it. But if there is, in fact, a significant push across the state in different regions, I think we can get on board.
Which topic are we talking about? It's going to be spicy.
Food and beverage, no pun intended. Yeah.
So,
Well done. Good job.
So back to the other two. Again, paid parking, necessary prerequisite is study. Study has to be done this summer. So let's focus, I think, in the short term on the transportation utility fee. That I actually think we probably were, some of us at least, were getting ready to dip our toes in those waters right about when we got sidetracked with the pushback on the water rate increase and the timing of water bills. And so it made sense to, step back and let that sink in. It has sunk in. And I think if we're going to take on this issue, I think we'll get close to a period of time where it would make sense because in addition to folks having calmed down and got a little bit more used to the changes on the water billing front, we've got this major infrastructure project going with Classic Street. It's drawing a lot of attention, I would think, to just general issue of our roads and what we can do with our roads. There's a lot of talk about trail improvements, specifically on Classic, but with the
Across the community.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think our responsibility here would be to one, demonstrate the need to bring more money into road fund. I don't think that's going to be too difficult. And then I think we have to explain, the logic of why you would use this particular mechanism to do it. One of the things that's always concerned me about this is that it's a flat surcharge. It's an extra 10, 15, 20, whatever it's going to be, charged to the water bill, and that will hurt or hit some folks harder than others. And so if we are ever going to consider any kind of hardship exemption for a fee or a tax, this might be an opportunity for us to do that. Talk to Layla a little bit about it. I know it's not going to be administratively easy to do, but it might be worth exploring. And then Layla brought to my attention a different approach being taken up, I think, in Clatsop County, where the amount of the fee is tied to the amount of water usage. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Makes sense.
To use the more it is. So if you're a second homeowner.
Yeah. And then there is, the other nexus that I think we could draw is the fact that, we have up to 200,000 visitors in a month in the summertime using our roads. Their gas tax, even if they buy gas here in Manzanita, their gas tax goes to where they come from, at least the Oregon residents that are visiting. So we don't, we're never going to get from a gas tax a equitable share to reflect the amount of Oregonians that are using our roads. And so there's a way for us to get visitors either in our vacation homes or in our rentals to pay more via this transportation utility fee. I think that's an argument we can prevent.
Well, I think that'd be up for discussion. That's not a position. It's.
No,
it's
but
a
I mean, I
possibility.
think it's, well, I should say, would it be an argument I would be happy to make? Because I think that, it's ironic that, so most of the houses in this city are by people that don't live here. So when they're using when those folks who are certainly stakeholders in our community,
Friends and neighbors.
but when they are driving on our roads, their gas taxes are going back to Beaverton or Gresham, Silverton, wherever they live. They're not staying here for advanced economics. Keep our roads in good repair. And our roads are not in good repair. We're gonna have a great road in the not too distant future. It's gonna make some of our other roads look pretty less so great. And I don't mean to say that if we do this fee, we're suddenly going to have Classic Street project level projects all over town. That's not the case. But we could have, I think, more resources to do routine maintenance that would be appreciated by folks that live here. So in terms of, I think if we go forward, let's say, for example, we were to go forward in the not too distant future, transportation utility fee. We have a lot of work to do with the community in terms of educating them beforehand. And we have enough experience now to know that despite all of those education efforts, until we have the second reading that implements the thing, a lot of people are not going to pay attention. And then they are going to pay attention when it's become law. And so we're just going to have to redouble our efforts to make sure folks know this is coming, and to know if we're going to adjust it in any way for lower income people or just for what type of resident you are, full-time, part-time resident. We just have to be very, very careful with that and very clear about that. And so I would think that even though it's considered on the list of the four options, the low-hanging fruit, the easiest to implement, it's going to take some serious work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I think we need to link it with, budget season. Budget season always gives us an opportunity to draw people's attention to the bigger picture and to the overall state of the fiscal health of Manzanita. And I do think that, we have a little bit of a challenge. I talked to Layla about with it, and also with Catherine, that we're actually in better shape than a lot of cities around us. We're in worse shape in the sense that we have the crappiest property tax rate that we can't do much about.
That would be the lowest.
I
Okay. So
guess it's not crappy.
it depends on how you look at it, Jerry. Yeah.
Good point. But the reality is that I think a lot of towns nearby would gladly trade places with us in terms of overall fiscal health. So we need to, we need to use the budget season and the budget process to educate folks about the reasons why we have resources and reserves and are still in need of additional revenue. And so I guess, whatever we do on transportation utility fee, we can't do it without close integration with the budget process. We can't do it without talking more about the inventory of things around town that need fixing in terms of roads. We can't do it without a series of community forums and conversations with councilors. It'll take work. A lot of us put in a lot of effort before we enact that. But I would say that if we look at the list of four, that's certainly in first place. I don't know that we have a good excuse now. If we're going to let it die on the vine, let's let it die on the vine. But if we have put the time in to think about it, to look at it, and we know the path forward, I think we should get to it sooner than later.
Question.
I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time hearing today. Could you? speak
Yeah.
up? Thanks.
Out of those four options, when I start looking at paid parking, the study estimated 125 to 145,000. Did that incorporate in like what the city's investment would be? Because this to me potentially seems like it's going to be a bigger investment from the city because we're going to have to pay for a study. There's obviously equipment involved if we're doing it. Enforcement, issuing tickets, administrative fees for chasing people for the payments and stuff. Was that part of that estimated income or was that already separated out?
That's good questions. I'm not really sure. I would say the one part that is probably not was not included was the parking study. I do think that I'll go through the report carefully. I do think they considered the administrative costs of running a paid program.
Yeah, I'm not specifically against parking, but when I look at those four options, that's the one that sort of stands out. This is going to take a lot more investment than some of the other options.
I agree, but I have to say, I think we all had this experience. It's amazing, easy it's becoming to get money out of your wallet and parking meters without,
Well, there's all the apps now too.
Yeah, yes.
Almost every city I go to, I can use the app and
Right.
But there's going to be a lot of community pushback
Sure.
on that.
Sure, absolutely. And I, again, I think that if we were to do a study and, we could figure out a way to protect residents through some kind of a permitting process and focus on, paid parking honestly has been one of the direct responses to the question, well, how do we get day trippers to
Yeah,
participate?
right.
that seems to be the underpinning of prepared food tax as well. But I don't, again, I don't think we do anything parking without a study that tells us what our inventory of parking is. And man, it's anecdotal. We hear a lot of people complaining. I can't personally attest to that. I don't have any problems parking in Mansfield.
You don't drive very much in Manzanita.
I don't drive very much. But I don't doubt that, if you live close to Bonita, as many people do, I don't doubt that in the middle of summer, you have all kinds of folks,
What's regarding of having to pay for parking during tourist season? When it's so crowded, I'm like, I'm not gonna do that, I'll just walk.
Yeah,
Because I don't want to deal with parking paid.
right.
Well, I think there's an advantage to doing the study, not necessarily with the idea of are people going to pay for it, all the questions that come up, but just simply like guiding the city. Is it adequate for what we need? Is it adequate for the visitors? This ties into the discussion about the city's assets. We have assets. We have places, I'm not advocating it, but we have places that could be turned into parking lots. We haven't done that. We haven't. So I think I think there's another reason to do it, which is to just address the livability question, the car capacity in this area and understand what it is. Sorting through all the inevitable points of view about parking, of which I've learned there are many. And just get somebody to look at the nuts and bolts of it who can take a non-emotional approach to it and actually give us data.
Yeah.
So that would be useful because it hits us as residents here, it hits visitors, and if we do it at a time when the city is at our normal, busiest time, that would be great. It gives us more information about what we need to change, if anything. So, yeah.
And I do think that if we were to go forward with the transportation utility fee, I think, although that will take an awful lot of focus on the part of council and staff to sell the concept to the community, we should be talking about it as part of a multi-pronged strategy. We don't have to say that, we're definitely going to do paid parking, we're definitely going to do a prepared food tax, but we should say that, we are looking, as all communities across Oregon are, at multiple options, because the primary is not getting the job done. We do not have the kind of property tax structure in Manzanita that covers even, I wish, and it's not quite there, wish that all these other options exceeded our take property taxes, because I think that would be an easy way to sell anything. Prepared food, I think, would bring in probably almost twice as much, certainly significantly more. That's not quite the case with transportation utility fee, although I'll bet you these numbers are already a little dated because we've had growth since the study was done, and depending on how we structure that fee, we could exceed the 195 estimate.
So I have a question. I attended the League of Oregon Cities, Small Cities conference at Rockaway on Friday, and we got the legislative update from the lobbyist. And his belief, there was an attempt in the legislature this year to flip the 70-30 percentages about what we do with the TLT money. And they're optimistic that in the next session they're going to flip it, and it's going to be 60-40 split, with the city getting to put 60% in general fund and only 40% reserved for tourism promotion.
This is of our additional 3% points. Yeah, this is the small piece of it for us. Yeah.
So
there may be some additional revenue coming in via that.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so there's always been this.
It doesn't get to the diversification piece, and I struggle with this because when we talk about the budget and the reliance on transient lodging tax, that's tied to visitors. It's a particular kind of visitor spending money in a particular way, right? When we talk about parking for visitors, that's also reliance on tourism. We
Right.
talk about the additional of food and beverage tax. Primary idea there is to have people contribute to the city who are here to visit. But all those three things still make us dependent on people visiting for the
Right.
industry.
But I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, and
Yeah.
this is the question I want to pose is, because it always seems like the 70-30 is such a restrictive number. How much fresh air do we get by turning it the other direction?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
We're in the fortunate position
Yeah.
that, you know, it's not gonna be a huge shift for us because it's only that 2%. Other cities, it's a big deal for them, so I don't want to rub it in. But
Yeah.
it isn't nothing, but we have also pivoted and started using those funds to support our tourist facilities in a different way. So we rely now, whether it's in that pot of money or this pot of money, to do the things that we do. And so I wish it were a bigger deal for us, but it won't be huge. I would say 5 figures at most, which isn't to say that that's not nothing,
You're right, right.
but it's not going to be, I would be surprised if it has a 6-figure impact on our general fund. It could, but it's doubtful.
Okay, in the same,
And again, I'm spitballing. I know this is recorded, so someone could.
the same bucket, I mean, probably heard that there's optimism that they may finally be getting some traction in Salem on doing something about property taxes.
Right.
Yeah, no.
I think if we
Potentially for commercial.
sit back and bank on good news from Salem on either of these things, I think we're gonna lose more.
Yeah.
So Jerry, we've talked about the things you recommended that obviously those are really important. Are there any other ideas out there that as you go to LOC meetings and talk to other communities?
I mean, there's a longer list that LOC is doing most of the work. Excuse me. Eco Northwest is doing.
Closer to the mics, I'm a little concerned that this isn't picking it
You're
up.
right. I'm trying to have my back to
Yeah.
my college. Okay, that's all right.
Yeah.
So Eco Northwest is doing a lot of the work for LOC statewide. So, you know, LOC has identified a longer list of possibilities. And we are either doing them already or for different reasons, backed off here in Manzanita. I don't really see anything jumping out that would make a significant difference. So no, I don't agree.
I think the main thing is to, well, two things. The main thing is to continue the education and sharing information with people about where the money comes from, how the money's used, where we have discretion, where we don't. Think about it, like 4 years ago, very few people really understood how much we relied on the TLT tax to run the city. And we determined that we were going to start talking about that and sharing that and saying, you know, I still play this quiz. So how many dollars of the city's budget do you think comes from property taxes? And people are astounded. It's less than $300,000, and it still is. So, you know, and when I get them to look at the property tax, you see that number and you see how it compares to all the other, you know, 14 or 15, I don't want to exaggerate, 14 or 15 different things that are on there precisely because the property tax is flat. I think people's education about that in this particular city has really improved. So I think it's on us to make sure we keep doing that. And now we're shifting into another conversation, which is specific to our transportation system. I'm trying to train myself not just to say roads, because this includes things that are really popular with people and people are really asking for around walking paths and safe biking and wheelchairs being able to get around town and all those things. And we don't have the money to fund that in the way that people would like to see it in our community. So that's where it starts. And then the secondary piece is there are different ways to raise money. And one of these things or any of these things could be a way to raise money. And depending on which we choose, it could either increase our dependence on tourism to do these things, or it could decrease it a little bit because property owners primarily would be, in the case of the fee on the
Right.
property owners and or renters, people who are I always struggle with how to say this right, but are in the community, have a financial stake in the community, live here. That's our money going in to pay for it, hopefully supplemented again by tourism. But yeah, so I mean, that's the conversation with people. And I think trying to give people a very realistic look, and Classic's given us a chance to do that, to say, hey, to do a project of this scope, to do these 4 things for the community is about $3.5 million, roughly, give or take. It's not small change. We're not talking about maybe saving another $5,000 a year over, 10 years. I mean, capital projects or just projects in general around changing the flow of traffic and people are going to require an investment. And then we have the other possibility of saying, what does it look like if we take all the roads that have been exempted from the normal city standard way back in the day? Still don't know why that was that was done, but there was some deal done back in the way where a number of people in the city are responsible for their gravel roads, and that's pretty much what they are. Do we want to keep that the same way? And if we do want to make a change, who bears the cost of that? Is it simply the neighbors, or does the city have a moment where we say, we're all in this together and we're going to pony up part or all of the money to make that work happen? So I think the more tangible we can be about what the work actually is and what it will mean to
Right.
people, then, well, the financial discussion is never an easy one. At least people understand very specifically what we're trying to do with the money, because this is not the conversation so far, and the work has been towards funding the transportation systems in town, not a general fund that might be allocated differently. It's going to a specific place. So I've been watching cities around the state, small cities, the last couple of years at what they're doing. And, the only differences I can see are in cities that are still a bit larger than us, and they're putting fees on other things. And they're contentious. So, I mean, Ashland has everybody went to the mat on these additional fees they wanted to put in just to keep their park system running. So it's going to be a park use fee that people are paying. The utility fees are used in different ways. Sometimes they're to keep wastewater systems running. We have the blessing in our town of having a regional system that's in good shape. So your earlier point about the fact that we're in pretty good shape, we're trying to get ready for the next level investment in town is I think the main takeaway I take from this and why we're looking at it.
Yeah, we are, when Manzanita Pines comes on, we're gonna have more local residents driving on streets. We certainly are gonna continue to have more and more tourists driving the streets. I think we can, I think there's a lot of good arguments to be made. We wouldn't be breaking new ground. This is something that apparently has been going on. You've talked about Bay City on occasion, Leila, but you're familiar with other towns that do it.
A lot of other cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I think the biggest issue is to be able to demonstrate the need, as you've been talking about, transportation system, and explain why we can't use some of our other dollars to address those needs.
So for example, I think it's irresponsible to dip into reserves
Right.
to take care of a capital project. The reserves are there for emergency, or in some cases, they're there to build for a specific project. So yeah.
Yeah. And I just think that we have to be proactive and affirmative and not play defense, but we do, but I think we can easily project different lines of contrary positions. And so
Yeah.
we can be prepared
Yeah.
to address it. And I do think that there's an opportunity either with this classic approach that has, different payers, and different rates, or with some kind of a acknowledgement that, certain folks may be able to justify a waiver. I mean, I don't think we have to be insensitive. We wouldn't be insensitive. Don't, I don't think we want to be insensitive to the fact that this would be, $10 a month as is going to be felt in some places.
I think we also need to consider or talk about the annual raise in the water bill in conjunction with this.
Yeah.
What's named, or we do something different there if this were to go in place.
Oh, yeah, it would be a separate, so the adjustment to the rates for water would be inflation. So only the base rate and the tiered rates would be affected by inflation. You'd probably make a separate decision when you adopt the master fee schedule. If you wanted to increase the utility fee, would be a separate action.
Not for longer discussion today, but I'm kind of curious about the idea about tying something to the water use when we're actually trying to get people to conserve water. I think those two things might help each other.
So if you did a variable, yeah, and that was
Yeah.
just to clarify, was to try to. I know there's some work being done at the state level that Clatsop County's been involved in too, to try to get some sort of vacant home tax. So I asked for the report. I can share that with you. So I think that was the intention, was trying to get at the homes that are vacant because they're second, third, fourth homes.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, and no
Yeah.
one's decided anything up
No.
there. It was just an idea that came up, and as I talked to other nerds who care about this stuff, these things come up.
Well, I think there was a New York Times article about the East Coast, and I had 5 or 6 calls from people saying, why can't we do what they're doing in, I think it was Rhode Island.
Yeah,
What are they doing in Rhode Island?
Newport, Rhode Island. It's this whole thing of homes that aren't,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm also I'm sensitive to that, like really sensitive because of the length of time people have owned homes here, the varying circumstances. So that'll have to be a deeper discussion if we even have it. So, okay.
But we do have information that tells us STRs, for example, if they're bringing in, or maybe vacation homes are bringing in 5 or 6 vehicles a weekend. Those vehicles are directly impacting the roads. So there is a nexus there. So I don't know.
It's not diversification then. It's again going back to the same pot.
Well, it's diversification in that it's a different mechanism. You're talking about coming from the same folks, the visitors. Well, to some extent, you're right, but this would be.
I love the butt. Go ahead.
This would be. I mean, let's face it. I'll acknowledge this as a resident of Manzanita. I'm getting a free lunch. I pay a couple $100, a few hundred, whatever it is, in property taxes that go to the city of Manzanita. And I get a whole lot for that. And so what I pay for water is what I pay for water. So if Manzanita sells it to me, or some Acme water company sells it to me, I'll get what I pay for. So if I'm asked to kick in another $10 a month, and I don't have tax burden that is currently being shouldered by visitors, I think equitably that's a reasonable ask. And sign me up, I'll pay.
Okay, more to come.
That's one.
Okay. Tom, did you have something?
Just one thing, because, when we talk about our reliance on TLT, then you get into the discussion about, well, we're overly reliant on the tourist trade. And so, if you're talking about food and beverage tax, or the parking fees, what you're doing is you're playing into your vulnerability all over again. And there is a certain part of it that I think we ought to recognize that that's our business. That's what we sell, is tourism trade. And these are the people that, especially the day trippers, are coming and they are getting kind of a free lunch too, Jerry. So, they're not paying for the roads. And
Yeah.
I don't have a reticence to being reliant on these people that we're selling. We're marketing ourselves to.
The concern about it initially, because I've been listening to this part of it, conversation for a while, was the dependence on one kind of flow of activity around the city. And this was also a conversation going on during COVID, when we didn't know, like, are we going to fall off the cliff here? Actually, quite a different thing happened, but it really highlighted our reliance on the visitors financially and for the services that people, all of us who live here, receive. And it highlighted the fact that we don't have much or any real control of those flows, and there are macro forces at work that could, change things in a little bit. So that was part of it, and that might feel a little less pressing now than it did then. But I still think it's worth the conversation about who pays for services, and what those services look like and who benefits from it. And
I get it. I'm just saying,
no,
let's recognize
yeah.
what our business is. Because you get all these people that say, oh God, you're promoting tourism, you're bringing all these out of towners in, don't like all of that. I'm sorry, but when Manzanita was founded, it was founded as a tourist village. Come to Manzanita and hunt beeswax.
Yeah.
That's our business.
Yeah, well, it's our history. And that's different than Nehalem's history and Wheeler's history in this, who had other industries back in the day that weren't here. You're right.
Right. And even in the Envision Manzanita statement that we just considered and approved last week, when they talked about what kind of businesses we were engaged in, we were talking about businesses that are on Lanita as quaint little shops and restaurants. It's really what, the vision continues to be. So that's where we're at.
Any thoughts before we ask Jerry to wrap up and hopefully give us an inspirational quote at the end?
Oh,
I do not have inspirational,
I think want to finish.
but I do want us to look at a calendar before we get too far along into the next new year, because I do think that these things have natural places where they fit. I don't think we necessarily well, I mean, I we don't want to be talking about parking before the parking study. We can't do the parking study any sooner than next summer. So that gives us between now and next summer a chunk of time. That would not be a chunk of time that I would recommend we bite off the bigger piece here with the prepared food tax. But I think it does give us a chunk of time to work on the utility fee. And I guess I just think we can embed that conversation into budget season so that to the extent we need to fit it into the bigger picture and help people understand what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and just feels like the timing is right. So we need workshop time to get into the nuts and bolts of how it actually look, and then we need conversation with counselor time to get out there and start talking. And so I'm looking at the agenda setter here.
I'm the person to give input to the agenda center, so right back at you.
Yeah.
So we can sit down and craft that together if you want.
Yeah, okay.
You could look at some flow, and I'm just thinking like the next 6 to 9 months, just keeping in mind what's going on with budgeting. we've got that, we've got Brad's work. We'll have some other things that come up that we need to do in workshop, just as a course of the regular business. So the sooner, like, maybe after the, like, early December, just get a plan or a suggestion from both of you, and then Layla and I will take that and we'll map it out.
So I'm probably, and this has probably been discussed, but I think it's really important to think about, and that is the case for doing all this.
Mhm.
I think it's really as part of the planning, as opposed to going straight to parking or straight to, this is an answer.
Yes,
I think it's gonna be really important to spend time on why we need it, what the purpose is, what our cost drivers are, and why it's important to the community, even though we're doing really well. To continue, in order to continue to do really well,
Yeah.
we need to have diversification of funding. And so I think that argument's gonna be strong and early
yes,
discussion. Okay,
agreed, Linda.
okay.
So, so for this next round of, I like to call it seasons, budget season, makes me think of baseball, so budget season. How far, I was about to say down the road, how far, down the path do you think you and Rick will be about like additional road projects, transportation related projects for us?
But as we get to the budget hearing stage,
Yeah.
so we'll have an updated 5-year capital plan. That's my plan by
Mhm.
then. So we'll kind of know what the next 5 years look like. My hope is to have one workshop at least with you guys about what we're proposing in the CIP.
Mhm.
Um,
What are you thinking about timing for that one? I'm just trying to get a calendar in my head.
yeah, good question. So I would say probably a workshop in February
Okay.
would be
Give an initial look at the 5-year.
realistic, because I need to spend some time with Rick.
Absolutely, yeah,
Because we're streamlined, we're focused on getting classic kind of
yes,
underway, but finished. So, because I start budget in January, right? Nina starts preparing now to get everything ready for that. So, yeah, so I think I'll aim for a February workshop just to say kind of here's what we're generally thinking for next year. And then here's what we're projecting out the next 5 years, and we can get your feedback so that we would finalize the CIP by the end of the month. Because I really pretty much need it by March in order to,
right,
that's when I really start building the budget.
okay,
But like all that pre-work has to get done.
okay. Any other questions about timing, Tom?
Yeah, because when we were talking about the land division amendments and, you know, me wanting to get this big picture of how the zoning and the land division all turns out to give us an overall view of what Manzanita is going to be. You were suggesting that maybe that was a topic for workshops that we would need to do. That would be a sooner than later kind of thing. So as you're thinking about topics for workshops and what's getting scheduled when,
Yep.
if you, I expect to have this conversation with Layla one way or the other. And if we're gonna do it as a workshop, then you need to figure out when we're gonna do that one too.
Yeah, that makes me. Will that change your decision timeline? What?
Well, I would hope not,
Okay.
you know, that's the thing.
No.
So.
You and I need a calendar, let's
Okay.
just figure it out.
Yeah.
it's, you know. So if everybody wants to be involved in that,
I feel like what that is you and I kind of just
that's kind of, yeah,
looking through
right.
stuff.
It's.
I feel like probably isn't an issue.
Mm,
Guys.
you know,
Okay, go forth then.
Okay.
I may have.
Yeah,
overreacted.
let you know. I mean, of course, you guys want to talk about anything? I'm here for you for that, but
Yeah.
I feel like I know.
we've had enough leading up to what this discussion is gonna be that we know where we're.
Be a lot of gesticulation and so I'm not sure that's,
Okay,
and that's helpful. Like that's the way that Tom needs to learn.
So,
Visual with auditory and.
All those kinds of different groups.
okay. So good discussion.
great
Yeah.
discussion.
Thanks to Brad and Jerry and for all the input and the questions. Thank you. And Layla, thanks for your contributions as well. So I think the we'll rely on Jerry and Brad to keep thinking about what the timeline will be. If I could just say by, mid-December, early December, mid-December, get a timeline to me of event kind of things that fit into our regular schedule. Then I'll sit with Layla. We'll take a look at that and I'll fix him with the other things that are going on. Yeah. So, I mean, and really think out, this is like 6, 9, even a year's worth of work, because we're not going to put anything in the budget for this next year. It's too soon for that. So you're really thinking about a timeline for the following fiscal year if we proceed. So that kind of gives you some more room to play with. It's not a hurry up offense.
Yeah.
To use an overused sports metaphor. Man, where do those come from? Okay, all right.
You're full of them today. It's usually your style.
It isn't, okay, it's my past coming out, so, okay. Well, thanks, everybody, for being here. Appreciate the conversations. Nancy, thanks for everything behind the scenes there, so appreciate it. And Josh in the back closet there. Gonna call this meeting to a close at 3:54. Thank you very much.
Lots in the back corner.